So we've got Microsoft right where we want them to start off this conference. Danl Lewin is, well, I'll let him tell you what his title is, but he is one of the key people in the new Microsoft, at least from my opinion. And I'd like to welcome Danl Lewin. Let's see if your mic's...
This mic on?
So Danl,
Steve.
We could cut to the chase, but I think we'll start with some softballs.
Okay.
What is BizSpark, and why is Microsoft giving away stuff?
Well, we're not really giving it away. That's the start. But BizSpark is a program that we launched about 30 days ago, and it's the first, I'd say, aggressive and proactive foray into the market of the web to the startup community. Simply put, a qualified startup, and I'll define that, has use right to all of our software and tools to allow them to build a web-facing business for 3 full years. So a qualified startup is one that's less than 3 years old, less than $1 million, local variations may apply, and annualized revenue, and private by definition. They're nominated by one of 2 entities, a Microsoft employee. We're launched in 82 countries, or what we call a network partner. Any one of you, someone who cares about the software and entrepreneurial ecosystem. Simply put, it's a way to on-ramp for 3 full years worth of use. There's a $100 fee when you leave the program, and then you normalize your business relationship with us on standard terms.
So tell us a little bit about your history. I mean, you have an interesting history in the sense that you've worked very closely with both Bill Gates and Steve Jobs in one career.
Well, yeah, one career, multiple lifetimes. So I grew up in business in Silicon Valley starting in 1976, spent my formative years at Apple. I had the good fortune of spending time working with a small group of people, starting with about 9 or 10 of them who built the Mac and launched the Mac. And then from that, built Apple's business in the education and university marketplace. Left Apple with Steve and helped start Next. So that's kind of the first part of my business life. And I got to see I'd say the first frontier, the first paradigm of graphics, driving change, really watching a market collapse, watching desktop publishing drive the Mac forward. And then 8 years ago, coming up this January, I started at Microsoft to build out our approach on a global basis to working with the startup community.
Now, there were reasons why you talked to Microsoft, coming from the startup community and from Silicon Valley. What convinced you that Microsoft was worth trusting on any level at all?
That's a fair question. On a personal basis, I had taken some time off, which allowed me the flexibility to think. I didn't use the net, I didn't use cell phones, and I didn't use a computer for almost 6 months. When I came back online, I was surprised by a speech that I downloaded that Steve Ballmer had given around the .NET initiative. And the core of it was Microsoft's commitment to XML, which in my mental model meant a broad commitment to industry standards, a broad commitment to interoperability. And by default, my belief was that the company was going to have to fundamentally change its approach to working with entrepreneurs and startups because they were the ones who were going to take advantage of these opportunities. So the good news for me was that I sent Steve an email. He responded in real time. I went and visited 2 weeks later. 2 days after that, he made me an offer to come figure it out, and I've been doing it since and had the flexibility and freedom to operate in this manner that has manifested itself in this recent program launch.
All right, well, we don't have a lot of time, so basically, how are we being locked in this time?
Well, I would say it's the same as it ever was, for those who remember the song, in that we're all about developers building on our platform. Microsoft had a fundamental mission in the beginning, a computer on every desktop. That created massive amount of opportunity for lots of developers. I would say that the first phase of the Microsoft history was in and around the desktop. And we're clearly reinventing ourselves now around distributed systems in the world of the web.
So, I mean, you've been under a lot of pressure from Google, among other people, right?
For sure. Google, hats off, has done amazing things for the industry, has created a frame of reference for all of us to work from, have a fundamental corporate mission in and around organizing the world's information. And I think they've got some reasonable attempts going forward to think about how they might turn that into a platform, but we could talk more about that if you like.
Well, you know, what I'm trying to lead you to is, you know, being open and warm and cuddly about the internet opportunity. I mean, you're asking people to trust you, and obviously Microsoft's had a lot of issues with that over the past, you know, 15, 20 years. What's the reason? I mean, I know there's a continuity from BizSpark for you on a personal level.
Sure.
But how do you explain to developers exactly why the Microsoft tool set and technologies are superior to open source, and how are you locking people in again?
Sure. I think the answer is.
Are you locking people in again?
If I was to give you a one-word answer, I would say yes, but no. You have a choice. You can certainly work with any open source platform assets in our BizSpark offer. So if you want to bring in MySQL as opposed to Microsoft SQL, that's fine. But when you pick a vendor and you pick a platform, you pick a tool set, you're basically picking a path. And so the approach that we've taken is to build in support for multiple languages, all open protocols, all industry standards for interoperability in terms of the way you'd get in and out of all of our system architecture, including the Azure platform services and all the mesh services and Silverlight and all the rest. But you do have to pick that. And for the most part, you make that choice because you get competitive advantage, efficiencies, economies of scale, and ideally you get a partnership that helps you in a marketplace opportunity, which in terms of our live services, you certainly do get to plug into that. And you could use other technologies to do that. You pick ours, ideally, we provide more help. There's some advantage to that.
All right, so part of the BizSpark offer is working its way into Windows, Azure, and Mesh, and those technologies.
That's right.
How quickly is that going to happen?
It's absolutely in line. We announced this program the week after the Azure services went public. Anyone who joins the program has access to all of the CTP, the Community Technology Preview, and anyone who's here today can go down to the booth that we have, which is personed, if you will, by 12 companies, 12 startups who are part of the program, and get access. You can get a code to gain access to all these software technologies that we're making available. So it is an absolute integral part of the way you would join the program.
So you're kind of coming from behind here, aren't you?
I would say that Microsoft and our approach is actually ahead. I'd say we were behind a little while ago, but I think the announcements we made in late October clearly position us in a leadership way relative to the platform and the programmability of the platform. If you look at where we were 4 or 5 years ago with approach and the lessons we learned from Hailstorm, coming forward with an approach that didn't consider federation, didn't consider OpenID, didn't consider the protocols that would be required from an open industry standard, wireline perspective. I do think that what we've presented to the industry today is technically more advanced and certainly a broader approach to thinking through cloud services and the kinds of solutions that people will build.
All right, so going back to your evolution as in the technology business, there have been, how many phases would you say in the technology space?
Well, one of the ways I like to think about where we are in the industry today is if you go back to the foundation, as most of us kind of know and love the industry, it was based on a microprocessor. And the first instance of the PC was all about content-less applications, office automation, word processor, spreadsheets. Graphics made a fundamental change and allowed, I would say, some key dynamics to occur. Markets like word processing basically collapsed. Companies like Wang went away, and that market rebuilt itself in and around a general purpose PC. We're seeing similar things occur as a result of building TCP/IP networking protocols into PCs. We've been able to see the web.
Windows 95.
Yeah, Windows 95 would be the next phase. And then I think you're seeing the next generation occur right now. And I think if you look at, for example, the mission statement and the vision statement for Microsoft at the moment, the vision is to allow people to realize their potential, which speaks to the technology wrapping around their life. And the broader vision for the company is to envision a world where solutions and software, the magic of software and the internet and devices change the way in which people interact with the world and technology. So we've evolved and we're working on the second phase of, I think, the fundamental change in this industry right now.
All right, so you have 85, the Mac, 95 TCP/IP, 2,000 or so
You get
XML.
into XML and all the standards associated with XML. And then again, you brought up Google a bit ago. I do think the focus and mission that they have to organize the world's information was a rallying point for everyone to think about the fact that we're in an information-rich world where the technology is important, but it's as much about the data, who owns the data, how it's moved, how it's housed, how it's organized, how it presents itself, and ideally how it wraps around your life. And, you know, here we sit, and I think we'll know the revolution has arrived when we don't have to go to the data anymore. It just comes to us when we want it to come to us, and we're beginning that programming model right now.
So that sounds like mesh, basically.
It is mesh at the core, and I think that speaks to, again, to ask me whether we're in front or behind. I think if you look at the core principles behind mesh, the nature of the live services, the programmability of them using open standards, that is a fundamental game changer relative to any other approach to cloud computing at the moment.
Now, you mentioned who owns the data. Who owns the data?
The end user owns the data. The enterprise owns the data. I think that was a telling moment in time in and around the Y2K build-outs, right, when Windows 95 and Office 95 went in and everybody was changing out their databases and their systems of record in the enterprise. You know, once they paused post Y2K build-out and they started to digest all of the systems they built, the demand on the industry was, make it work together. This is our data. And so I don't think there's any going back. I don't think there's any trick here. I think it's inevitable. So that's where I'd say to your question about trust, everybody's playing by the same rules, whether it's from a regulatory perspective or just the fact that end users control this, because the end user is the driver in this new model.
Yeah, but let's be you know, straightforward about this. I mean, you're sitting on a boatload of cash.
We are.
We're in an economic crisis. You can afford to do this, right?
Well, during these times when new architectures come into play, those that are in strong positions, and cash is an indicator in some cases, get stronger. There's no question about that. And that's been that way. I do think, though, that it's an ideal time for entrepreneurs. The disruption that an entrepreneur can bring into a new market opportunity. I like these simple phrases, really. I mean, markets collapse and then they rebuild. And we're seeing things going on in all kinds of markets collapsing for various reasons, financial services aside, but real change in many, many industries. And they will reform around this new technical web and cloud-centric architecture. And I think that's where the mesh and the control points and the things that we're bringing forward with an open ID and interoperability are key.
How important is Silverlight?
Silverlight. It's a front and center technology at Microsoft, for those who don't know about it. For us, it is a critical path item, I would say, in terms of display and portability. As people know, it's cross-platform, it's cross-browser. We work with, again, all open protocols for interacting. Programmability through multiple languages as well. And, you know, highly efficient and scalable. Some of the latest things with Silverlight 2, which people can go take a look at, I think are astounding in terms of the technical capabilities.
So I haven't used Windows in 8 years. Any reason why I should just never use it again and just wait for Silverlight to build
I don't
that
know.
office?
IBM made some announcement the other day about you can live in a world without Windows. You know, that's a personal choice. I think there are some advantages to using Windows, but there are also advantages to picking a platform that you're comfortable with. You can make your own personal choice.
So what do you think? Do we buy this? Is Microsoft warm and cuddly now?
A little bit. People are a little quiet out there. Huh?
All right, well, one last question.
Sure.
How do you think Ray Ozzy's doing at Microsoft?
Well, I couldn't speak more highly of Ray as both a human being as well as a leader who has come into the company and to take on a fundamental responsibility to recraft the company's approach, I would say consistent with the early discipline that Microsoft had of concentrating on the developer, concentrating on open, trusted, open APIs, his operating philosophy, and the statement that his technical teams have been able to make in this most recent announcement at our developers conference speak for themselves. So I think Ray is both a world-class guy and the absolute right person at the right time to drive change at Microsoft that'll help everyone in the industry.
Well, I think if you're treated with the same kind of lens and viewed with the same, take a look at what Microsoft's doing and compare it to the competing vendors, I think you're going to come out pretty well.
Well, thanks. All things considered, that's really all we ask. I mean, for those entrepreneurs in the audience, we have a fundamental belief, and it's where I spend my time, that while your businesses may fail, and they do, the numbers speak, those that come back around and have a willingness to ask us a fundamental question about whether or not we can be helpful in certain areas, we'll give you a straight answer. And for those of you that succeed, we'll do whatever we can to help you. And you've seen that happen across the board, even in the cases of the companies that we've acquired. Not all of them. In fact, many of them are not pure plays using Microsoft technology.
So are you going to buy Twitter?
We buy a lot of companies, but I have no forward-looking statements or announcements to make today.
Are you in negotiations to buy Twitter?
I have no forward-looking statements to make today.
Okay, well, thanks, Danl
Thanks,
Lewin.
Steve. All right, thanks, everyone.
And Dan, you should just bear with me for a minute. You should have a drink. Thank you. What do you have? I think you have a lot for the LeWeb participants. I heard you have 30 gigabytes of storage on your network. I hear you have you have Hugh MacLeod is also doing cartoons at the Microsoft.
Yeah, I did make the reference. I didn't dive into it in any particular detail, but there is a booth downstairs in the right-hand corner facing the back of the building, and there's all kinds of interesting things going on. It's right by the lounge, not the least of which, and perhaps more importantly than anything about Microsoft, is the fact that there are 12 companies down there doing interesting things.
Which are here thanks to Microsoft.
And yeah, and that was our commitment, obviously, that our technologies are typically underlying, and we're counting on those to exercise them and do cool things. And we're seeing 6 French startups and 6 companies from around the world, as far away as China and other places as well. So good.
And Microsoft has been a partner since the beginning of LeWeb, so I'd like really to thank you for being our official partner this year.
Well, we're glad to help. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Dan. And Dan will be around. Thank you. So